Perfect. That sounds good. Welcome everyone to the POP Climate Leadership Conversations, a tribute to our chief mentor. This project aims to strengthen youth leadership and explore tactics that empower the youth to take action and tackle the most pressing environmental issues faced globally. We are conducting a series of conversations on leadership strategies, recommendations, reflections, and examples, each focused on global leadership and a different pressing environmental issue. This initiative is designed and implemented as a tribute to our chief mentor, late Dr. R.K. Pachari. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Ms. Vardhani Ratnala from the International Solar Alliance. I will now go ahead and introduce our guest speaker, and we will start with a question right afterwards. Vardhani is a passionate advocate for gender mainstreaming and social inclusion, and a monitoring and evaluation professional. She has strived to mainstream gender through multiple gender initiatives and into organizational policies, monitoring, and evaluation systems. In her 2 decades of experience, she has worked with several bilateral, and intergovernmental organizations, such as UNDP, UNICEF, DFID, UNFAO, and IDLO. She has developed gender policies for organizations, trained staff on them, and led multiple research and evaluation projects from gender and disability sensitive lens. She has led evaluation on legal assistance projects for girls who are victims of sexual trafficking and led research on the interlink between women's empowerment and microfinance, as well as research on accessible transport for women with disabilities and access to healthcare. Currently, she works at the 118-member country alliance, International Solar Alliance, championing gender inclusion in solar initiatives to address energy poverty and reduce the negative impact of climate change, thus achieving Sustainable Goals 7 and 13. She also leads ISA's Solar for She project, a gender initiative that aims to enhance women's energy access and incomes by building their capacity and providing them employment opportunities in the solar sector. I'm very excited for this conversation. We have a true expert here who will not only share her knowledge about the energy transition, but also about how, as women, we can become involved in making it happen in a very just and quick way. So to start off with the first question, we would like to ask you, Ms. Vardhani, what does leadership mean to you?
To me, leadership is a simple act of, leading people or leading an organization, but the leadership styles are obviously quite different. There could be a leader who is effectively a leader because of the title or the position they hold in an organization. Say, for example, a senior director or a director general of an organization is a leader who is a leader because of the title plus because of their ability. But I would think leaders who are able to influence people and gather people or convene people around a particular idea, those are the ones which I find are quite inspiring. And especially when you look at young leaders like, Malala Yousafzai or Greta Thunberg, they are known for not holding a particular title in an organization or, not being very senior in terms of, designations, but they have the ability to influence people, to convene people around a particular idea, and as well as, serve as icons who are humble, who are unassuming, but at the same time, very, very inspiring. So to me, that is a kind of leadership which I think is most important. And that is what appeals to me, specifically in the younger generation.
Thank you so much. I completely agree. I think we are living in a world with a lot of incredible role models who are often younger than us. I would now like to hand it over to Ivan, who will be asking the next question.
Thank you so much. My question will be, could you please tell us more about the work at the International Solar Alliance? And also, if you could please tell us more about the Solar for She.
Yeah, so if you look at where we are currently, there is a major transition happening across the globe. There are more than 135 countries who have pledged net zero emission targets. That is, they have said that they'll reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And there is a huge transition towards, renewable energy industries from the fossil fuel industry. So you can see that within solar itself, there's 1,000 gigawatt of capacity which has been installed in the last decade or so. So given this huge transition that's happening, we needed a specialized agency in the world which exclusively focused on solar technology. So you have the UN agencies like UNEP, which focus on environment. You have the International Energy Agency, which focuses on energy. You have the International Renewable Energy Agency, which focuses on renewable energy. But there was no specific agency which, exclusively focused on solar. And that is where the idea of our organization, the International Solar Alliance, was born. So it was formally incorporated in 2015 with India as the president and France as the co-president. And we are an alliance currently of 118 member countries. And what we do is we try and ensure that there's increased deployment of solar technologies in our member countries. And the way we do that is through three specific pillars of work. We work on the policy and the capacity building space, providing assistance to our member countries on these areas. Then we work on programmatic support, where we try and do small demonstration projects so that our member countries are then able to understand, when you're implementing a solar project, what are the different issues that you can face and how these can be resolved. And the third pillar on which we work is the advocacy and analytics bit, wherein we not only try and gather more data to create awareness about solar and its associated technologies, but we also advocate in terms of why is solar the best, technology to have. What are the pros and cons of, the different renewable energy technologies, and vis-a-vis that, where does solar stand? So this is what our alliance broadly does. And of course, we work very closely with our member countries, plus with a lot of other, multilateral and bilateral organizations like, say World Bank, Asia Development Bank, and so many other organizations that we partner with. So in our entire work on solar space, we have seen that, yes, there are certain pockets which are completely left out, which are completely marginalized. And that is where the idea of just transition comes in. So if you look at, the current global statistics, it says that there are around 700 million plus in sub-Saharan Africa who don't have access to any energy. Which means what? I mean, if you don't have access to electricity or any form of energy, just imagine living in a house where there is no electricity, not being able to have access to internet. Then what happens to, kids' education, their learning, the entire generations are affected. So there is a multi-generational effect. So therefore, we want to ensure that those groups which are marginalized from energy access are included. And which are these groups? It's basically women who generally have a low, energy access. It is youth because of various issues, and poor people in general. But poverty again is, it's not a clear-cut definition, but there are layers to poverty. Then you also have other marginalized groups like the LGBTQI plus community, or people living with HIV/AIDS, people from ethnic communities, from many other minority communities. So we need to ensure that in this entire global transition that is happening across the world, where everybody is shifting towards, solar and other renewable forms, these marginalized groups are not left behind. So the transition should include these groups, and therefore it should be a very just transition. And that is where this initiative of Solar for She was born. We at ISA wanted to start something which talks about just transition. But among the different groups which I mentioned who are marginalized, we thought it would be very effective if we first started off with women to look at, what are the gender initiatives that we can initiate to ensure that women are included. So Solar for She, basically, it's a broad program which focuses on multiple areas. For example, in the policy space, it looks at, policy frameworks of different countries to try and see whether gender considerations have been adequately included or not. So there is a report which the Global Green Growth Energy Institute had come out last year. They studied national energy frameworks of around 192 countries and found that only 1/3 of them mention any kind of a gender consideration. So there is a huge gap. So we try to address this through our policy initiatives under the Solar for She. The second area we are interested in is around financing. If you look at financing, again, there was, I think 3 or 4 years back, a study by Sustainable Energy for All organization, SE for All, what they found was just 2 to 10% of the official development assistance which flows to countries includes any kind of a gender equality objectives. So just imagine if there are 100 billion flowing to developing countries for work on energy sector, only around 2 million is allocated for gender objectives. So we want to do a lot more in that space to try and ensure that there's adequate financing to for gender equality objectives. We also look at other areas like, for example, providing training and capacity building. As I said, data is another area which we are looking into in terms of, do we have adequate data? Like if I want to know how many women have, say, access to a particular solar technology, there is not adequate data. So we want to look into that, plus advocacy. So this is I would say, the broader vision for the Solar for She program. And within that, in the next 2 or 3 years, what we intend to do is start off with 2 pilots in Africa, because as I said, Sub-Saharan Africa is the place we've identified where there is maximum need in terms of access to energy. So we are intending, this year we are planning a research, in detailed research on the market as well as the needs of women. And then next year we are going to initiate 2 pilots in either Ethiopia, Nigeria, or Guinea, two of these 3 countries. And through the pilot program, we are going to offer women training on solar employment technologies and then try and find employment for them within the entire solar value chain. So this is the broad program and what exactly ISA is planning to do for the next few years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vardhani. Thank you.
It's a really interesting initiative and also necessary. And yeah, people, I mean, I will say even people in general tend to think, oh, there's this much amount of resources being located into solar technology, so we're going in the right path, right? And maybe as an investment budget, it's fine, but it necessarily needs to be uh, in this distributed in the, well, having into consideration gender, such, and these also um, vulnerable groups and stakeholders who are actually the ones who are supporting most of the economic structure of the countries. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ivan, and thank you, Ms. Vardhani. I will now hand it over to Kamal for her question.
First of all, thank you, Ms. Vardhani, for explaining us about Solar for She and how the transition is coming into play like now globally. So my question is in the same alignment. So you mentioned that it is now more important to involve more minorities and the more marginalized groups so that they can also have the accessibility to this transition, global energy transition. So I would like to ask you, what kind of leadership was involved when ISA was planning to like launch this Solar for She, and how do you think that we can like ISA can accelerate this, and what leadership is involved in accelerating this Solar for She and this global energy transition?
Yes, definitely. So leadership, I think, as I said even earlier, when I defined leadership, the ability to influence is something which is the most important. It's the crux of any kind of a transition. So we, as an alliance of 118 member countries, I think have a key role to play as a leader to ensure that all our member countries are aligned against certain key objectives that we have in place. So we would like to come out with, as I said, policy or regulatory framework saying that this kind of regulatory framework is inclusive for women or inclusive for young people. It's not just about saying that, okay, maybe 2% of the funding which I have or 5% of the funding I have is allocated for gender initiatives. No, but it's also about measuring and tracking whether this money which you have allocated is actually translating into benefits for women or for young people. So that is the kind of a leadership role we want to play, wherein we try and see that there are adequate policies in place which ensure, there is inclusion, there is a just transition. We want to work on financing mechanisms, which I mentioned earlier, across our member countries to ensure that, money which they receive, whether it's from international organizations or the money within the country, which, they allocate to development programs, is also adequately allocated for, gender initiatives as well as initiatives for young people. But broadly, if I look at leadership, I feel, apart from what we as an organization are doing, the kinds of leadership that is required in order to ensure a just transition across the world is, one is, we need a global leadership from multilateral organizations, not just ISA, but the UN bodies, the World Bank. They all have a very, very critical role to play. They have a very strong convening power, which we have seen at, the COP meetings which happen annually. So for them to be able to bring together powerful stories, they should be able to collate and, bring people to talk about their experiences and why a just transition is important. So getting young people or getting women to share their experiences in international global forums, I think, is something they can do very, very concretely. The second thing, as I said, is access to finance. I mean, if there is so much money which is flowing in the sector, almost 100 billion or so, then you need to ensure that at least a certain percentage is allocated for gender just objectives. Of course, you also need leadership at the national level, where we want policymakers to look in their own policy frameworks and see what exactly can we do to include women, or what kind of budgeting programs can we have, what kind of skilling programs can we have to train women. Then, apart from the national leadership, I think corporates also have a very important role to play. So, corporate leadership, I think, should look into what can they do to ensure that more young girls or, women are a part of their workforce. They should not only be training them; they should be providing them, maybe scholarships. They should be providing them incentives to study the STEM field. So if you look at currently, the statistics say that in the renewable energy workforce, there are only 32% women who are involved in the STEM fields, that is the science, technology, engineering, and math. And how do we break this barrier? How do we ensure that, more girls study, these fields rather than study, say, something like a bachelor in arts or, some other courses? So how do we encourage them to get into this? So that is something where corporate leadership has a very, very important role to play. Of course, at the community level, there are a whole range of organizations which have a very key leadership role. Like, for example, NGOs can play a lead role in garnering community around breaking some of these cultural and social norms that no, girls should study arts, girls should study home science, girls are not made for science. Some of these cultural and social barriers can be broken through, leadership by NGOs. They can again start skilling programs. There's so many other things in terms of leadership that, different players can do. So yes, ISA does have a leadership roles, but I also feel there are a whole set of players within this ecosystem who also have to play a lead role in order to be able to see this gender just transition that we are talking about.
Thank you, Ms. Vardhani, for explaining about the solar for she and the transition.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Vardhani. I would now like to hand it over to Drisha for her question.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Ms. Vardhani. I think you have mostly covered that, how women should be involved. But I specifically want to ask you this question, that how can the youth contribute to this transition? And specifically, how can they become involved in Solar for She? Like specifically youth, because we have a lot of young audience who are going to watch it. And if they want to just pick up some pointers that, okay, so I can start from here. Uh, from your point of view, what can be those initial steps?
So I think it's extremely important for young people to be involved in this initiative. Uh, I mean, they are the future. They are the next generation who are going to take over and lead this world. And currently, I think almost 16% of the world population, that is 1 in 6, are young people. So this just energy transition would not be successful if we don't involve youth. So I do think they are the prime force or the driving force behind this entire initiative. So what can I as a young person do when this entire energy transition is happening? A By 2050, it is estimated that around 40 million jobs will be created in the renewable energy sector. So you young people should ensure that they have these skill sets to be a part of this renewable energy workforce. They have to ensure that they are trained in the science, technology, engineering, and maths. That is the STEM fields. You can't, if you want to be a part of the future, you need to ensure that you have some skill set to be able to contribute to that workforce as well as to benefit from this entire transition which is happening. The second thing which young people can do is they can be advocates for change. You have already seen that many young people are activists. In fact, I was a part of the pop festival which happened earlier this month, and it was very interesting to see the presentations made by some of the young people, the innovations and the ideas they had. So be climate activists, bring to the fore these issues which are important. Third, try and ensure that you act as a bridge between communities and corporates or government. So government and corporate is advocating for this transition towards a clean energy, but there are many communities which are missing out on this because they don't have awareness, or there is resistance. Like, why should I adopt a particular technology when this particular technology is fine with me? So create an awareness and act as a bridge between the community and the government and the corporates who are facilitating this transition. Within Solar for She, we have one particular model which we call as the enterprise incubation model, and where I see young people being involved. So under this model, what we intend to do is maybe over the next 2 years or so, identify young people who have specific ideas. There were a lot of ideas presented by young people at the pop festival too. So we want to identify some of these innovative ideas and then help them incubate this idea and turn it into a pilot program. And then once this pilot program is successful, then try and link them with, say, venture capitalists and other financing to ensure that it is a proper enterprise, and then build the leadership capabilities, etc. Of course, this is in a very nascent stage currently, but that is how we would like to engage, young girls specifically in the Solar for She initiative. So to support their ideas from the incubation to actual implementation stage. So these are some of the ideas we have been thinking about how do we engage young people.
Thank you so much. I think some of the points that you mentioned are going to help immediately the young people to rope into it. And of course, developing a skill set is definitely the most important thing when you talk about the industry in terms of working as a professional there. So thank you for sharing your insights.
Thank you, Miss Vardhani. I completely agree with Trisha, especially the last thing you mentioned about how there is this this willingness to help the youth implement their projects and their ideas and take them to financing. I think a lot of people listening to this conversation will be very interested in being able to join that program. So as the fifth and final question, it's actually not something that we had talked about earlier, but I think you touched on it a little bit, and it'd be great if you could go a little bit deeper to see what would be your message for young girls who are hesitant to go into STEM fields, that maybe they have the curiosity for it, but they're not sure about it. What would you say to them?
See, I believe in being a little bit of a radical. Of course, there are constraints, like I spoke about cultural norms, social norms, which prevent young girls from getting into STEM fields. But at the end of the day, you need to think about two things. A, do you want to be a part of the future? If you want to be a part of the future, then STEM education is extremely important. B, if you can't get into STEM fields, it's not the end of the world. It's fine. You can still be a part of the global energy transition by being a part of that workforce in other roles. Like, you could be an administrator, you could be a financier. So you can strive. So as I keep saying this thing, even in an earlier conference, I mentioned it, that where there is a will, there is a way. So if you want to be a part of the future, it is possible. try and be there in the STEM fields. Cannot, you can find alternatives, but don't let go. And if you can't even be a part of the workforce, that is also fine. Do your bit in your society, within your home, in terms of adopting renewable energy technology, in terms of propagating renewable energy technology to your neighbors and to your community. I think these are the ways you can still make an impact. It need not be a huge impact, but even a small impact does matter.
Thank you so much. I really like that message, that it's a great way to become part of the future. I think as we talk to some girls, sometimes they like math, but maybe they see it as, oh, I don't know if I will be able to. I don't know if it'll be too hard. But then, like you said, if there's a will, there's a way. So thank you so much for leaving us with that message. I think all the girls who listen to this conversation are going to be very, very inspired by your words and also by your work. And well, before closing up, we just really want to thank you for being here with us and taking the time to talk to us and answer our questions. We are very excited to keep on looking out for how Solar for She keeps moving forward and how the pilot goes. And we'll just thanking you for your time and giving us this experience.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be a part of this forum and to be in conversation with all of you. It's a great opportunity. As I said, I had attended the pop festival to see the enthusiasm of young people, and I do look forward to young people being a part of our alliance and contributing and supporting us in achieving our objectives. Thank you so much, and especially thanks to Ash as well as Dr. Pachori too, who have facilitated this. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, Dr. Ash sends his apologies. He had some connectivity issues, but he is going to catch up via the recording, and he would have loved being here with us, but I'm sure he will really enjoy watching the recording. Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you. See you all. Bye-bye.
See you.
See you.